Should the inside of your buildings be playable? And if so, what's the best way to approach building them? Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Blackmagic Craft. If you're a longtime member of the tabletop crafting community, you will be familiar with a certain phenomenon that seems to occur. This community has a few obsessions. Post just about any type of project and, well...
Hey bud, you know what'd be really cool is if you put some magnets on it, eh?
Guys, you don't need to put magnets on everything. Another common trend is that pretty much anytime someone posts a house or a building,
hey bud, can you take the roof off to play inside?
It's an outhouse, it's this big, it doesn't need a playable interior. For whatever reason, this community is obsessed with the idea of playable interiors in their buildings. And since this is a subject that I get asked about a lot, and since I am still in full-blown renovation mode in my kitchen, I'm not going to be building anything this week. So this is an excellent opportunity to both show you some of the buildings in my collection that you've seen sitting behind me and discuss how I approach the subject of playable interiors, especially on buildings with more than one level. So let's take a look at some of my buildings. So here is an assortment of some of my buildings. Well, most of them actually. I don't have a huge collection because you can get a lot of reuse out of buildings like this. The first thing I want to address is size. When it comes down to whether or not you should make your buildings have playable interiors, the number one deciding factor for me is size. When you get buildings that are as small of these farmhouses here, I think it's kind of a waste of time and effort. They're so small that that interior is barely playable. When you get a little building like this farmhouse, if you were to remove it and have the floor footprint, it would be so small, it would be pointless. When buildings are this small, I think you are far better off just using theater of the mind. Have the building on the table for the outdoor encounter, but when they go inside to explore it or talk to an NPC or whatever, you can just use theater of the mind and just describe what's inside. Or if you really want an interior, you can remove the building and put down one or two basic dungeon tiles to represent the space. When they're this small, don't even bother. The kind of minimum building size that makes it worth it to do a playable interior is something like this. This is when the interior actually starts to become useful. You can place some minis on it, place some objects, actually make use of this gaming space. But even this is a little bit small, but a house of this size is where I start to make the interiors usable. Now, you'll notice something. When I removed this, I did not remove the roof, leaving the walls. All of this came off together as one piece, leaving only the footprint. And in my opinion, this is the most important thing when designing playable interiors. I would argue having the walls come off with the roof is the only way to go. So many people decide to have the roof removable and leave the walls, but this is chock full of problems. One, you're creating double the amount of work when sculpting. I did the outside, I sculpted and painted the outside. The inside is just raw styrofoam. If I had the walls remain, I would have to do twice as much work for no real reason. What's more important, because hey, your time, that's a resource you might want to spend to have a cooler look. The most important thing to me is that I don't have walls blocking my view. Imagine this small footprint had walls that were 3 or 4 inches tall. People sitting around the table would have a very difficult time seeing into the building space to play. With the walls removed, you have perfect eyesight from every angle. You also have the entire footprint of usable space. You don't lose the size of the walls. If your walls are even a 1/4 inch thin, you're losing 1/2 inch on every direction. And once you start putting a bunch of objects and miniatures inside a building like this, the second you have walls in the way, Now, this wonderful playable interior is no longer playable because there's not enough room, you can't see, and when you reach in, it's going to be really awkward and you're going to end up bumping some things. So make the walls come off with the roof. It is so much better. Now, what about if you have multi-story buildings? Well, the same principle is applied. On a building like this is a 2-story building. You can remove the walls, revealing the footprint of the first floor, but you can also remove the roof, showing the footprint of the second floor. And you can see here, I have a hole cut out for the stairwell, and you can actually see a little stairwell inside. And on the main floor, there is a set of stairs, so they correspond to each other. In game, this is really wonderful because you can have your building laid out on the table, and then when the group enters an area, you can remove the first and second story, revealing this footprint, and place miniatures inside. And put this building just beside where you're playing. Now, a character decides to go upstairs and explore. The nice thing is you can then remove this roof, put it aside, and then place that character's mini on the second story. So you have both of these footprints laid out side by side so you can show simultaneously what's happening on the second story or the first story. This is really great because when the party is split, it's a way to actually show real time what's going on both floors. You can take this principle and multiply it by 3, 4, however high you want to go. Just keep doing this. Have the footprint of every floor removed. You'll notice a trend with the buildings that I have placed here. They're all of a similar size, and that's because just like the small buildings where I think it is pointless to craft an interior, I think that once buildings pass a certain size, it is also pointless to craft the building or the interior. Once they get pretty big, then I think you're better off doing the interior using modular dungeon tiles or even a battle mat. Because if you start crafting big massive buildings, that's going to be very difficult to store. It's not going to have a lot of reusability, and you're going to have very few options for actually using them in games. So once you get bigger, just use your dungeon tiles, your tavern tiles, or a battle mat. Don't worry about crafting the building. So that's my basic ideology of how to approach playable interiors. But since we have these buildings out, let's do a little showcase, and I will just show you what I've done a little bit on the construction and the aesthetic and how I approached it, and you can use it as some inspiration for your own builds. So this building, the footprint is just a piece of 1/2-inch foam. I crafted a permanent fireplace and staircase. I don't necessarily recommend doing that, but you can. The inside, as you can see, is just foam core. And because these walls are not revealed while playing, I didn't have to spend any effort making them look good. You can see I created this little triangle stairwell here so that looking down, it looks like a staircase going downstairs. The windows, this iron bar window look is simply granny grading or needlepoint grading. It works really, really well for windows. Just paint them up with some metallic and put a piece of black paper on the back. They look really great. You can also paint the interior out black or something, leave this off, and create a light source, which I actually think I did on this building here. Same sort of construction, just out of foam core. Put the granny grading at a 45 degrees and it gives it that nice old traditional window look. And inside I have some LED lights and a battery holder. I'm missing the switch. I meant to order some switches so that I could turn this on and off, but I'll just have to hold it. And then you can see a light source, which in dark game lighting, that'll light up really nicely. If you don't want to go through the effort of making individual shingles like I have on this building here, just do some wood planks. Keep it really simple. Some Tudor style beams. The walls here are simply just foam core that I textured very slightly just by painting on some glue to give it some kind of depth and texture. And that's really it. This is entirely foam core, no Proxon used whatsoever. This building was created just with dollar store foam core and a sharp blade. My dark cathedral build just removed the whole structure, revealing the footprint of the floor below. This building, luckily, if you're new to the channel, I do have a project showcase where I discussed this build in detail and showed many progress photos from the build. I will put a link for it up there and down in the doobly-doos so you can check that one out. And last, I'll show this small but interesting 2-story building. This I kind of modeled to look like an old mill that was maybe converted into a small tavern. I dubbed it the Bump and Grind because it is an old flour mill that was converted into a tavern that may or may not offer some services beyond food and drink. The roof lifts off with the walls of the 2nd story. It reveals the 2nd story, and then you can remove that, revealing the interior. And sometimes you need to think outside of the box with what to leave in place. I did not have, for example, this wooden support post come off attached to this because I knew that moving it around, that would eventually snap off and break. But if it stayed here like this, it would be a lot more secure. This building also, again, just made out of dollar store foam core, no Proxon needed, foam core and a knife, shingles made out of cereal boxes. So don't say that you can't build things because you don't have a Proxon or fancy foam. All you need is some foam core, a blade, some imagination, and some effort, and you can have some pretty great looking buildings. I hope you guys found this video informative. If you enjoyed it, hit that like button. How do you approach the subject of playable interiors? Let me know in the comment section below. If you need to pick up any tools or supplies for your own builds, head over to blackmagiccraft.ca. There I have my essential equipment store where you can pick up all of the tools and supplies that I use and recommend to you. If you enjoy these videos that I make and you want to help me continue making them, the best way you can do that is by supporting Blackmagic Craft on Patreon. I would love for you to check it out and become the newest member of the Blackmagic Craft Fellowship. That's it for this week, guys. I will see you again next week. Cheers.